It's amazing to start this Bible studies with you, whoever watching, if you wanted to, because someone started to ask a question and ended up like, oh, I'm going to just do this. Like, yeah. Anyway, so let's go back to the book, Habakkuk. I'll just call him that way. Let me read something. Thank you to the student Bible. Oops. I haven't read this chapter in ages, so it's nice to reread it and like, oh. As the title says, the first complaint from the prophet and then the Lord's answer. So it's only 11 verses, which is pretty short. But the next part a lot longer. But anyways, other prophets carried messages from God to humankind. Habakkuk addressed God alone. He pondered deep riddles of life while wrestling with two terrible realities: the degeneration of his own nation and the certainty that it was about to be overrun by another worse nation. How can a just God allow, even use, such evil? It's like, that's something I thought when I was younger a lot. And I read this chapter, I know, ages ago, and like, maybe it makes sense to me, and now I'm older, I've walked with God a little longer, and it's good to know, to share with some of you who may or may not know this information. Okay, to fully delve into Habakkuk's questions, you may want to read the book of Job and Psalm 73, which explore related issues. If you want extended study, you can go there. Let's focus on this book. Okay, the first two chapters of Habakkuk tells of two complaints and two answers. As you read, try to imagine the emotional changes Habakkuk experienced as he talked with God. Let's focus on that. There's more. The third chapter is something exciting, but that's something to look forward to. But let's go to chapter 1. Let's imagine Habakkuk, where he's at. The oracle that Habakkuk the prophet received. I may want to move it over to my Bible, student Bible, so you can see and follow along with some print. How long, O Lord, must I call for help, but you do not listen? Or cry out to you, violence, but you do not save? Why do you make me look at injustice? Why do you tolerate wrong? Destruction and violence are before me. There is strife, and conflict abounds. Therefore the law is paralyzed, and justice never prevails. The wicked hem in the righteous, so that the justice is perverted. So looking at his words, his first complaint, he noticed things are happening in his country. Like, why is all this injustice and violence? And it's like, why is the law is not working? And why is no justice? And injustice happening all over. And justice being perverted. And because humans can be wrong at times. And people, when broken people are broken, you know, they just make worse decisions, I believe. And in law, the man's law, you know, is made of human beings who will make mistakes. Or so broken that, you know. But how do you think Habakkuk felt during his time complaining to God? I can, from reading it, from my opinion, it's like he was very frustrated and angry how his country is falling apart, and he wanted justice to happen, but it's not happening. And a lot of good people was being hurt during this time. Well, let's look at the Lord's answer. Look at the nations and watch, and be utterly amazed, for I am going to do something in your days that you will not believe, even if you were told. I am raising up the Babylonians, that ruthless and impetuous people, who swept across the whole earth. to seize dwelling places not their own. They are a feared and dreaded people. They are a law to themselves and promote their own honor. Their horses are swifter than leopards, fiercer than wolves at dusk. Their cavalry gallops headlong. Their horsemen come from afar. They fly like a vulture, sweeping to devour. They all bend down on violence. The hordes advance like a desert wind and gather prisoners like sand. They deride kings and scoff at rulers. They laugh at all fortified cities. They build earthen ramps and capture them, and sweep past like the wind and go on. Guilty men whose own strength is their God. I read a little bit, but yeah, that was the Lord's answer to like injustice. Well, bad things can become worse. It'll be worse before it gets better. Anyway, so it's like unbelievable. Like Habakkuk was thinking, what? You guys said worse things our way? How is that possible? Like, I mean, to Habakkuk and his fellow Israelites, it seemed unbelievable. How could God hand his own people over to the cruel and arrogant Babylonians? But incredible reversals can happen to people who think they have an automatic entitlement with God. That's what you should learn about that. If you feel entitled with God, yeah. Because sounds like God does not like entitlement at all. Very bad to have entitlement. Anyways, hundreds of years later, the Apostle Paul quoted this verse to a synagogue congregation. So, yeah. If you go to Acts 13:41, urging them not to let complacency keep them from accepting Jesus. Let me go to that, to how connect to into the New Testament. How even Apostle Paul used the Old Testament verses to get. So it's from Acts, the book of Acts. I'm getting there. Verse 13. Chapter 13 to verse 41. So I'm almost there. So give me a time. It takes to find it. And verse 41 is right there. There is it. This is Apostle Paul. Take care what the prophets have said does not happen to you. Look, you scoffers, wander and perish, for I am going to do something in your days that you will never believe, even if someone told you. So yeah. It's amazing how some of these passages are ageless. It fits so many situations through all the generations. We always had evil since the serpent came into the garden talking to Adam and Eve. Yeah, complacency sound like an entitlement or the deadly sins that can really prevent people having a true relationship with God. So, yeah, that's interesting to know. Well, later, I guess I'll go to the next complaint. Habakkuk actually still finishing off the last part of chapter 1, and Lord's answer is all the way, has to take up the whole chapter 2, like 19 verses. Wow. Okay, that's something for you to look forward to. And I hope you feel like, this is interesting study and you like this. But for many of you who want to know, why is Lord permitting evil? This is a study. And right now, God will at times will permit even more evil to happen. But let's find out next time what's the next Habakkuk's complaint and what the Lord's answer to that complaint. Okay.